Welcome back to the C-Suite. So for many of you who have been on Netflix over the last week, you've been watching the most recent documentary on the O.J. Simpson murder trial and the investigation that led up to the trial. And it's been fascinating. I'll be honest with you, when I saw that Netflix was doing this documentary, I thought, what else could you tell us that we did not already know? And they seem to accomplish that. So let's begin at the beginning with our guest. He's Detective Tom Lange. He is a retired Marine, once a Marine, always a Marine. He is also one of the lead detectives in the O.J. Simpson murder trial. Now, Tom wrote a book called Evidence Dismissed with his partner, and it is the most fascinating telling of the night of the murders and the subsequent events since then. When I read the book, and I read every page of it, I was both astonished and appalled. I was astonished by the amount of information about this case, specifically the evidence that we had not heard, and appalled at some of the incompetence of the prosecution in not listening to Detective Lange. For instance, as we will get into in just a moment, the blood. Everything starts and finishes with the blood. I know a lot of people have questions and concerns and thoughts about the O.J. Simpson trial. I do not. I do believe he killed both of those people, and all of the evidence is there to back it up. So I called Tom, and we had a conversation about the trial and the book, and he agreed to come on and do my podcast back in the day. We did that. We talked about the book, and he has since written 2 additional books since then, Malice in Wonderland, and now the most latest offer, The Dirty Business of Murder. So with that big old introduction, Tom Lange, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, I haven't seen you in a while. Tom and his wife were in New Orleans a few years ago for a conference, and I got to introduce them to a New Orleans po' boy. And your wife seemed to be a pro at it. I don't know. You struggled with it a little bit there, man.
Yeah. Got it all on my shirt.
So let's talk about this. And we'll get to the Netflix documentary and how that all came about. But let's level set everyone on the murders. June of 1994. Let's talk about you getting that phone call alerting you that there had been a murder in Brentwood.
Well, the phone call came in about 3 a.m. And when you work homicide, you kind of get used to that. It's not between 9 and 5, Monday through Friday, when you get your homicide. The cell's at a weird hour. So it's kind of used to it, but you're half asleep. There's my boss, John Rogers. And he said, we've got a double in West L.A., and the captain would like to buy you a cup of coffee. In other words, get dressed, you're going out at another call. So that came in about 3:15. I ended up getting there I think it was about 5 a.m., by 4:45. And by the time I'd gotten there, they got the streets all secured. It was on Bundy, which is a through street from north to south. And this was on early Monday morning. Our first concern, of course, was Bundy Drive, because it goes from Wilshire to San Vicente. It's a through street for traffic, people going to work in the morning. And we had the street closed down. And so the concern was, we have a double homicide, the body's in public view. What about all this traffic? We're going to have a big problem, not just with traffic, but this is going to attract the media. Now, the media has a job to do. We can all respect that. But the last thing a cop wants at his murder scene is the media to show up with their cameras. It's going to cause problems one way or the other. But you have to acknowledge them. You have to do what you have to do. So that became the first concern, because Monday was closed off. We were met by the initial detectives, and they'd been there 3 hours at the time. It was decided that robbery homicide would take the case, because that's the type of case that we would take, something that would take an inordinate amount of time. And most geographical homicide units, frankly, don't have the time to doing other things. We usually have a little more expertise, a little more experience. And so they would give us these types of cases. From there, we met the people at the scene. We determined that who the woman was who lived there. We found out soon enough that she was the estranged wife of O.J. Simpson. Well, right away, when you heard that name, it made media. It was going to be a big story. Well, regardless of who has been killed, what happens, anything else, O.J. Simpson, it's going to be a big story. At that time, he obviously was not a suspect. We had a second victim there also. But the fact that they were estranged, of course, that goes into the back of your mind as an investigator. We viewed the bodies from a distance. At a crime scene, you don't go like you do on television and approach the bodies and turn them over and check for ID and pick this up and pick that up and put it down. You don't do any of that until the coroner shows up and until the bodies and the scene has been completely photographed. You got all your people, you give everybody a job. The criminals have their own jobs to do, the late great people do, the photographers do. And now you got to worry about security because the media is going to show up with their cameras, and you're worried about compromising evidence, shooting the bodies. The bodies in a murder case are also evidence. You don't want any of that compromised. I mean, any blood tailing on the body is evidence. The positions of the bodies, the fact that they're wearing shoes or not, any jewelry on the woman or lack thereof, wounds, clothing, positioning, all this is evidence that you don't want to release at all because it could be key to your investigation. You want to keep everything that you have close to the vest for all the obvious reasons until you find out what's going on. So that became another concern. But in the middle of this, the brass shows up and they're thinking the same thing. We're thinking in terms of investigating the crime. They're thinking in terms of image. It's understandable. It's a bureaucracy. That's what they do. We got to get a hold of O.J. Simpson. That's the first thing that they're concerned with. Well, one of the officers there, Mark Furlan, was familiar with Simpson. He'd been there to their home in Rockingham at a prior radio call a couple of years earlier. He knows where Simpson lived. And so the chief, I believe was their commander at the time, said, "All right, we have to notify O.J. Simpson. I need somebody to stay with him. Tell him that we also have his children."
Right.
Been removed, and they were at the police station. He can get his children, but we need to notify him before the press does. Now, I understand that kind of thinking. It's only 5 minutes away. So we decided that we would do that when we woke. It'd be a wake-up call about 5 a.m. for Simpson. And we would leave a team with him because obviously he's going to be upset. This is his estranged wife. We didn't really know if they were divorced. We didn't know what the situation was between the two of them. All that the concern was is to notify him, get that out of the way. So 4 of us went up there. 2 would stay with him, and that would be Furman and his partner. And we would return and do the crime scene investigation, Phil Van Adder and myself. So we left and went up there, and we can go on this
Well,
for a while.
but yeah, because I want to talk about when you got there, but before, I'd like to, because you talk about this in the book, and I want to clear up a couple things that may be misconceptions to people about the crime scene as you found it. Specifically, and we're going to talk about him a lot in this thing because Netflix really put him to the forefront, and that's Mark Furman. Mark Furman, according to evidence dismissed, there were more than a dozen officers there at the scene before he got there, correct?
Yes, there were.
And so let's talk through the procedure of what that looks like. That's not a random guess. There is a protocol to determine who gets to a scene and at what time. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, at a crime scene such as this, everybody has a job to do. When you first arrive, there's someone there with a regular notebook. They identify you, put your name down, your serial number, your unit number, the time that you arrived, and what your assignment would be. In this particular case, most of the uniform officers that showed up, their assignment was security on the outer perimeter. Mm-hmm. And at a crime scene, again, on live television, it's not close in. You want to take it out, especially an outdoor crime scene. There may be a body or two within a few feet of one another, but I'll take a crime scene out 2 or 3 blocks. That takes several officers to block streets, go to the alley. In this particular case, there's an alley behind the Bundy location. To stop people, to make sure nobody gets into the scene, to secure it properly. It takes a lot of manpower. So that was the biggest concern. And again, everybody has a duty, and that's logged in. Once you determine what you have and who's going to determine it, then the people start going to work. In other words, the criminalist shows up, you make a first call to the coroner. The coroner's not going to come out right away because your investigation is going to go on for a while. Any crime scene of this magnitude, you're going to be there for hours. I've been at some crime scenes for 30, 36 hours.
Wow.
Why things get done the way they're supposed to be. Nothing can be changed until everything is totally documented.
Yeah.
In photography and now even with video. So everybody has their scene, everybody has something to do, and you're supposed to, everybody at a crime scene is supposed to write down everything they see, every observation, when they saw it, what they saw it, but you don't go up to it, you don't kick it, you don't touch it, you don't step in those obvious things.
Well, I wanted to make that clear to people because in many of the television retelling of this, they don't, if you would have the impression that Mark Fuhrman found the bodies based upon the way a lot of the documentaries have gone, and that's not the truth. He was not the first officer there. And so in order for him to have done what he was accused of doing, at least a dozen of officers would have had to have been complicit with him in some of the tampering. And I just wanted to make that part clear that it's not just opinion. I don't know Mark Fuhrman. I don't know O.J. Simpson. But just to say that those are the facts based upon the documented process at the scene. Now, you've got two children upstairs asleep when this stuff was going on. The garage door is open. The front door is open where apparently she came out of. Talk about getting the children out of that house before we discuss going to Rockingham.
Okay, as you said, the garage is towards the rear. It opens into the alley. What you do at a crime scene is you make a secure pathway that everyone should stay on. In other words, we're not going to make our pathway through blood. Here we had footwear impressions in blood. Well, obviously the suspect has fled. We could tell what direction. A lot of blood, a lot of scientific type of evidence, fiber evidence that could possibly be all over the crime scene. So we had to be very careful with the pathway. The pathway went up the walkway, but stopped, went in through the house and out the back garage door. Obviously, the suspect would have fled in that direction, but not in the garage because the bloody footwear impressions told us exactly where the suspect went. He went to the rear gate, out into the alley, probably got in the car and turned off. So the kids were removed from upstairs, down the stairs, and out through the back because the front was totally secure.
Right.
And unlike a lot of these productions, they like to fill in the blanks on their own.
Right.
You don't do that at a crime scene. It is what it is, and that's how it gets documented.
Yeah.
And again, it's a good point you brought up because you see a lot of this thing, it's very misleading 30 years later.
Yeah.
A lot of these misleading.
Well, there was a little bit of license even in the Netflix documentary because it talked about that part. And obviously you have two victims on the outside. In the book, you talked about how the officer who found Nicole didn't initially notice Goldman off to the side in the shrubbery area there. And obviously he's not going to get up right close to her because, as you said, he's got to protect the integrity of the scene at least as he sees it initially. So you get the kids out of the house. It's been documented that Mark Fuhrman at one occasion was called out to Rockingham because of a domestic violence incident that happened out there, and she chose not to press any charges. So he had been out there before. Was there anyone at the scene when you got there that said to you either in jest or in passing, I wonder if Simpson did this? Did that come up at all before you went to his house?
No, none of that really came up. Fuhrman did mention that he knew where Simpson lived because we wanted to make that notification. It was important to do for all the obvious reasons. And he knew how to get there. He didn't get into any details. Of course, the best thing at any murder scene for any officer there is just keep your mouth shut, write it down, put it on paper. But we don't want to be talking loosely. There was some things that were said later on by Furman that he wasn't not only wrong on, he should have kept his mouth shut.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
didn't
Well,
do that. But I'll have to say the Netflix was very well done in that regard.
it was.
They went very deep. And I thought it was an excellent.
No, it did, because he talked about some things, and we'll come back full circle to the crime scene to talk about the evidence. But I'd like to have you take us through getting to Rockingham. 4 of you are at the gate, buzzing to get someone to come and let you in so you could make the notification. Pick it up from there.
Okay, we got to the Rockingham location. Again, it's for me, his partner, and Van Adder and myself, 2 cars. We pulled up, still dark, about 5:15 a.m., and we saw a security sign there from the security company out front at the Ashford Gate. Now, as we pulled up, we came up Rockingham, and the first gate is the Rockford Gate, or the Rockingham Gate. And up, it's a fairly narrow street up the incline to the home at Rockingham. And the first thing, as we came towards the Rockingham Gate in the house, the first thing I noticed was a white Bronco parked off to the side by the gate, just north of the gate. And it was parked at kind of a funny angle off to the side. And it's one of those little things that you in the back of your mind, this isn't everything, but in the back of your mind, you put it back, something that doesn't fit this neighborhood. This is a very, very wealthy neighborhood. These are mansions. These are beautiful homes. A lot of high-dollar people live up here. They got a lot of bucks. And they have driveways and gates, and they don't park their cars in the street. They park them inside their gates when it's secure and off the street. This was the only car that I could see that wasn't behind a gate somewhere. It's just a little thing. Doesn't mean anything, but it's something you put in the back of your mind. Something doesn't fit here. And it was at an angle, like somebody was in a hurry, perhaps. So you put that in the back of your mind. Then we went up to the Ashford Gate, and we turned at the Ashford Gate. That's where we saw the security sign. We notified security because there's a phone outside, and Ron Phillips, from his partner, got on the phone initially and tried to connect with someone in the house, and it just rang and nobody picked it up. Okay, 5:15 in the morning, we just left the bloody crime scene 2 miles away. The estranged wife of the person that supposedly lives here. Nobody's picking up. 2 cars in the driveway. Lights on. Apparently light on in the front. Nobody's picking up. What are you going to do? Oh, we'll just go have breakfast and talk about it, right?
No, right.
Something's going on here. Our first concern then as cops is leaving a bloody crime scene is, do we have another crime scene in here? This is an incident where you have to do something and you have to do it now. We contacted the security company. They showed up. They said, no one told us about anybody leaving here. They should be inside. We don't have any notifications of anything going on. And there's the phone number. And again, we try to call again. Nobody's answering. We looked at the gate. There's a wall around the gate. The wall is about 5 feet high, 15 feet inches in diameter. Easy to jump over the wall. Even somebody, an old guy like myself at the time, much younger, could jump over that wall. So Furman was by the way. I said, well, I'll open the gate from the inside. Turns around, he climbs over the wall, goes to the gate, opens the gate, we go in. We go to the front door, and we ring a bell, all 4 of us. No one answers. Bang on the door some more. Nobody's answering. Now there's real concern. Who has these cars in the driveway at 5:15 on a Monday morning? Is Simpson inside? Is he alive? Has he been attacked himself? We don't know. Nobody's answering the front. You go to the side of the doors, along the side of the house to the back. There's a back door, and there's a glass door in the back there, so I'd bang on the door. Nobody's still answering. There's 3 smaller rooms off to the side, bungalows in the back. We bang on the first one, and this guy answers, and we woke him up. It's Cato Kalin, sound asleep. Meanwhile, next door is Simpson's daughter in another bungalow, Arnell. She comes out. We start talking to Cato, and Furman is interviewing him, and I'm going over, I'm talking to Arnell. And I don't want to make any notifications. She, of course, has just been awoke. She's concerned, obviously. What's going on? What's
Right.
going on?
Right.
I said, well, we've got a problem. After we identified ourselves, we're trying to get a hold of your dad. Because she told us she was O.J.'s daughter. She said, well, isn't he inside? And I'm thinking, oh, hell, we got a problem. I said, I don't know. Well, he should be inside. She says, let me check. Let me get a key. Now, Arnell later denied this. But that's what she said. Let me get the key. We'll go in the back or find out.
Well, how
So
would
she
you
get-
how would you have gotten in the house if she didn't give you get the key and open?
Right. Exactly. She says, I have a key. I'll find out. Now she's ripped. What's going on? What's going on? We haven't told her what's going on yet. We don't want it. We may have her dead and they're lying dead. I don't know. Till we go and take a look. So we go to the door. She opens the door. She starts. I said, no, please step over here. Let me go in. I will go in the door. And what's Josh? She's starting to nearly panic. Phil starts talking to her, try to calm her down. We'll let you know. Just look inside really quick. So I went in with my flashlight. No lights in the house. And I shooting around. And everything seems fine. I said to Arnell, is there anybody that should be in here other than your dad? And she says, well, the housekeeper, she should be here. I believe his name was Gigi.
Yeah.
There's a Gigi there. And so I said, well, where's her room? Well, off to the left here by the washing machines. So I go to Gigi's room, a chandelier, bed is made, no problem, nothing here. So I start calling around the house a little bit. Anybody home? Is anybody home? Police, anybody home? Nobody's there. I'm satisfied. I think everything's okay here. So I go back out. And by now, Cato is awake, and he said, no, she's telling Furman, who tells us, Simpson is back in Chicago. We left in a flight late last night. So what? Relief, at least here.
Yeah.
So we tell her, well, this is the situation, and we tell her about Nicole. And she breaks down. She's really upset, obviously.
Yeah.
Hale works, he's shook up because he was very close to Nicole. In fact, he lived at her place before.
Right.
So they're very upset. Carol, we get statements from everybody. We find out where Simpson is, the hotel. Ron Phillips is the first one, I believe, gets him on the phone and tells him we've got a problem. Your wife has been found dead, something to that effect. He didn't say how, didn't say she'd been murdered or anything else. Still not knowing the exact situation between Nicole and Simpson.
Was there a reason he didn't say how, or was it just in happenstance that he didn't?
Well, that was the first question. That was the first alert that you get. First,
okay.
These are the things that tick in the back of your mind. First, it's the car. Some doesn't feel like it. Now it's, if it's me and my wife and my kids, I'm going to say, are the kids okay? What happened? None of this. None of this. This doesn't make sense. If it's anybody that I know, they're going to go, what happened?
Right.
I go, see, where are the kids? Where are the kids? Because they were with her. None of this. So again, at the back of your mind, this is etched in the back of your mind. So he says, we got to get you back. So all he says is, okay, I'll be on the first flight back. He doesn't ask anybody's name. You got a phone number? Where you got nothing? He says, I'll be on the first flight back. And
Did he talk to Arnell? Did he and she have a conversation before he got off the phone?
No. At that time, no.
Did he ask to speak to her?
He may have after, because he called back and I talked to him.
Okay.
And he said, all right, I've got a flight coming back. I'm going to be at the airport. He says, I said, oh, what flight? Well, I don't have the flight now, but this is, he says, I'll get to the house, something to this effect. I'll be at Rockingham. I said, well, we can see you at the airport. He says, no, I'll have somebody pick me up. He didn't say attorney or anything else. I think you mentioned AC. I'll get a ride back. May have been. I said, I don't think you mentioned it at that time. He said, I'll get a ride at the airport and I'll meet you at Rockingham. Okay, fine. Again, what happened? None of that.
Wow.
Where are the kids? Where are you small kids? None of this. Yeah. Now things are starting to add up.
Yeah.
Then I no sooner hang up than Furling comes up and said, I got to show you something with his partner. And then now, bear in mind, we've been at the scene long enough to make some observations. We haven't begun an investigation, but we see two victims. We see a white envelope with what appears to be, if you look a little closer, a pair of prescription glasses in the white envelope, blood everywhere, bloody footwear impressions. We see a knit cap at the scene, and we see a glove. A obviously left-handed leather glove between the bodies.
Yeah.
So, Furman says, look what I found behind Cato's bungalow. There's a glove. And we all looking at each other and say, this looks just like the glove at the crime scene. And we only have one glove there. We got one glove here. Now we got a left-handed glove at the crime scene. I wonder if this is a right-handed glove. But you look close enough, yeah, it's a right-handed glove. Again, nobody touches it. Nobody gets near it. This is now a crime scene. Furman had found out from Cato that Cato was in bed talking to his girlfriend, and there was a thump and a bump right behind him, and there's a big air conditioning unit behind his bungalow. And he couldn't understand. He thought we were having an earthquake. So he found out we weren't having an earthquake. So Furman, doing the right thing, follows up on what Cato told him. And he goes around, and first things he sees is you look up with a flashlight, about 10 or 12 feet in, just below the air conditioning unit that's jutting out on two rods, is this glove. So now it's a crime scene because we're taking the glove here, glove there. The sun is beginning to come up. So we have to make some decisions. All right, this is a crime scene. Cato, Darnell, you have to get yourself together. You have to think of somewhere to go because we're going to close this house down and we're going to be here for a while. Furman, you and your partner, you're going to secure the premises and we'll send you a couple of units. You make sure nobody comes or goes, nobody goes anywhere. Phil, you're going to go to the DA's office and get us a warrant. I'm going to return to the crime scene and start working on that. We're going to need a criminalist here. We're going to need everybody here. This is an extension of the crime scene. Meanwhile, in the interim, and just before we went over the wall, Furman and myself, we walk over to the Bronco. Furman's on the passenger, the driver's side, and he sees what appears to be a blood drop beneath the door handle of the Bronco. Now, the Bronco, if you open the door, regardless of whether you are left-handed or right-handed, the only way to open that door is with your left hand.
Right.
Because the door sticks out and forward.
Right.
So it might have been from a knuckle, but it's right below the chrome door handle where this looks like blood. We don't know if it's blood or not. It just looks like it. So I take a look in the back, and I see a shovel in the back, a tarp, a clear plastic tarp, a couple of boxes back there, and we're starting to put a few things together. There's a piece of splitted wood. Looks like it's from a picket fence that doesn't belong there. The crime scene, one of these look for is things that don't belong. Mm-hmm. This didn't belong. And it was fresh. Splitted, fresh piece of wood, painted white. A splitter, maybe 18 inches long. We didn't know where that was from. These little things, again, are adding up. Until the glove. We have the glove, we secure the scene, we secure the Bronco. So essentially, we got Bundy, we got Rockingham, and now we got the Bronco. That's part of the crime scene. This is getting bigger. The only thing you can do is call in more people, secure everything that you have, and start investigating.
So I want to jump in here, Tom. So about a couple things you said, because you were able to set the scene about the interaction with Cato and Arnell and the call to Simpson and then him calling back and the glove. Let's start with the glove behind the bungalow. How do you believe that glove got there? Do you believe that glove was dropped there, thrown there? How do you believe the glove got there?
Okay. Later on, of course, things begin to come together. We believe Simpson returned to Rockingham in that white Bronco, parked the Bronco, went inside the house. Now, how do we know that? Well, later on, when the sun comes up, we find blood droplets from the rear of the Bronco through the gate, up the driveway, and into the house. Blood tailing that direction, tailing right into the house. It's O.J. Simpson's blood.
Yeah.
Okay, we know he went inside. If you just been to a crime scene and your knife was used, you're going to have blood on you somewhere. Okay? If you notice the bottom of your shoes have blood on, you got blood in your clothing. Evidence to us, stuff that a killer would not want to get caught with. You want to get rid of it, right? What are you going to do? He's got a limo driver that not only is en route, but all limo drivers usually show about 20, 30 minutes early.
Right.
Driver's at the Asper gate. He wants to get in. Cato goes out and finds out and lets the driver in the Asper gate. Meanwhile, Simpson is supposedly getting ready to go. Well, in my mind, Simpson is getting all of his shoes, perhaps, knife, whatever, glove, whatever he's got. If you go behind the bungalow, this little walkway, there's no lights on it. It's very narrow. Simpson's a husky guy. He's got big shoulders. Like I said, it's very narrow walkway. How about this? If you continue walking past the 3 bungalows in this island area, the first thing you run into is cobwebs. What does that tell you? It's been a while since anybody's been back there.
Yeah.
But I continued to go all the way to the rear. And if you go all the way to the rear, there's an area that's probably about 20 by 20 feet. This is just a dumping area. There's an old wheelbarrow in there. There's some old tires. That's where they throw junk until they get rid of it. It's actually has its own private junkyard behind the bungalows. Now, am I getting all of this bloody clothing, glove, shoes, am I getting all this wrapped together and going back there? And am I going to hide that back there? Because I don't have time to deal with that right now. I got to get rid of this bloody evidence.
Yeah.
So I'm going back to my little junkyard. I'm going to throw the stuff back there and get out of here. When I come back tomorrow night, I'm going to take care of it further. Unbeknownst to him, being a husky guy, he bumps into this air conditioning unit and he drops the glove on his way to the rear. But he doesn't go all the way back because for whatever reason in his mind, he's pressured. So he comes back out. The next thing we know, he comes out front and he's got his golf clubs and a couple of bags and this little half-moon shaped travel bag.
Yeah.
He puts it on the ground. He starts loading things. And I'm leaving a lot out, but I'm just getting to your question. This way, he's got the little half-moon shaped travel bag that they put everything in. Keeler goes for the bag. He says, no, don't. I got that. So he gets the travel bag, and he goes. He puts it in the limo, and okay, we'll see you later. Boom, we'll rent it late. Takes off for the airport.
So that is so fascinating. So what you are saying is that, and I never even thought about it that way, that when he was coming from across the way, he had gone out there to hide the stuff. And so that would explain why Cato came out the way that he did. And he and O.J. were talking about it and told him there was an earthquake, and they end up walking around the bungalow, and Cato said O.J. was following him for a while, but he didn't go back there. So that gives a different context to this, and it is so fascinating. So he has this bag, and this is where we shift into another gear on this, going specifically into the evidence. I want to go back to something Tom said about this, and I mentioned to you in the beginning, the blood. I said it in the intro. I said the blood. So Tom and Detective Furman find a spot of blood above the chrome handle of the driver's side door. When the sun comes up, they find blood that was determined to be O.J. Simpson's blood tailing on the left side of a body going into the house. Now, I want to jump forward, and then y'all stay with us, and then I'm going to come back. So the blood's determined to be Simpson's blood. Behind the Bronco, on the Bronco. Tom, just answer this question, then we'll come back. What time did you take Simpson's blood?
What time?
Yeah, what time did he give blood to you at Parker Center?
Oh, boy, that was early afternoon.
So, say early afternoon. So how could they have planted the blood behind the Bronco and on the Bronco if it was hours before they had the blood? I just wanted to drive by there, say that to you. Then go back to the crime scene. There's blood tailing on the left side of a body that was seen as they are assessing the crime scene that was also determined to be O.J.'s blood. How did they plant that blood there if they had not even been to Rockingham yet, had not spoken to Simpson, and he was still in the state of Illinois? And that's all I'm saying, just for context, because the first thing I caught that it was about 11 o'clock at night when I got to that part in the book. I was like, what? I said that audibly because you don't think about it. And TV doesn't lay it out that way, Tom. They just they don't give, time, chronological context. Now, back at the crime scene, you discover Ron Goldman has been discovered. You now have Nicole there. I don't want to go into graphic details out of respect. People have heard how gruesome the crime scene was and how slaughtered these two young people were. But now that you had been to Rockingham and you saw what you saw there and you're back at Bundy, what's going through your mind?
The fact that Simpson is now, as they like to say today, a person of interest. Mm-hmm. It's going to be interesting when he gets back. I'm telling Phil is going to get the search warrant, and you're going to return to Rockingham. But we have another problem with Simpson coming in. We don't want him sitting around waiting, getting a lawyer, doing this, that, and the other. We want to talk to him as soon as we can. He shows up in Rockingham. I'm back at the Bundy crime scene. Phil meets him. They have the little conflab there. They're talking. It's now a crime scene. Phil puts a guy by the name of Looper, one of our guys in charge of the scene at the time. He says, I've got to take Simpson back to Parker Center. Tom will meet us there. We're going to interview Simpson. This is not like another problem people don't understand. An interview is an interview. It's not an interrogation. Interrogation is a lot different. You're accusatory. You get a little tough maybe when you're talking. An interview, you're trying to glean inconsistencies.
Yeah.
So what else? What's going on? We have no idea as to the evidence. Okay? We're suspicious of a lot of things, with being suspicious as to evidence. We have nothing at all to show any evidence. Again, we suspect a lot of things. So we want to talk to this individual and see what he has to say. So when we do that, it takes off and they go to Parker Center. They call me at Bundy. And so you hate to leave a crime scene, but I had to leave a crime scene. You got to put things in perspective. Sooner or later in life, you make decisions. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. The last thing you want to do under these circumstances is sit on the fence. You got to do something one way or the other. Decision was to go in and talk to Simpson. Crime scene's not going anywhere. It's secure. And we're going to be here a long time, so don't worry about it. So they secure it. Meanwhile, the people at the scene continue printing the scene, photographing the scene, looking for evidence, this type of stuff. I return to Parker Center. All of a sudden, Simpson is there, but he's got two lawyers that show up with him. Again, back to my mind.
Yeah.
Another little thing, you're starting to build. But then, and we don't shake hands or anything when you meet somebody under those circumstances. But the first thing I see is Simpson, look at his hand. His hand is bleeding. The middle finger of the left hand. So, here we are.
Wow.
Left side, left hand, left side of the fleeing suspect from the scene. Everything's on the left. Left glove at the crime scene. If the glove had been kept on, he wouldn't be bleeding from the left side.
Right.
So the blood came off before he cut the finger during the attack. The right glove is at his home. These things are all being put together in the back of your mind. Let's see what he has to say about that. But we're not going to yell at him. We got nothing to confront him with. you start yelling at somebody. It takes about 10 seconds to realize his personality. He's in charge. Simpson. I'm in charge here tonight. You think in the back of your mind, sociopath, that you don't put that label on somebody lately. It didn't take long, though, before I did.
Yeah.
He's the sociopath. It's outside, the sun is shining brightly, but no, it's dark out there. It's black out there. I can't see where I'm going. That type of thing. He's a sociopath. We're going to get that from a sociopath. Sociopath has no conscience. Nothing about it. Whatever they say is truth.
Huh.
So you get around to the finger tape of them. So the interview was taped. In the interview, we get like 10, 12 inconsistent and sometimes inculpatory statements about where he parked the car, how he cut his finger. We get 3 different stories about how you cut your finger. None of them making any sense.
And he admitted in that interview that the blood, some of the blood in the Bronco was his. And again, this is before you saw the blood, you tie all the blood together, but he basically says, well, I bleed all the time. I don't know how you cut yourself playing golf. I mean, I'm not that good at it, but maybe there's a way you do that. But he said that. Then he said he broke a glass in Chicago. I wanted to ask you about one of the more infamous video clips from him getting to the crime scene. He was in handcuffs. And I'd like to ask you first, was he Mirandized? Was he under arrest? And if not, why was he placed in handcuffs?
Okay. The scene at that time at Rockingham is Bedlam. Okay. Phil was there. He just got back with the warrant. People everywhere, media everywhere. You can see a lot of videotapes where they're all over Simpson, they're all over Phil. One to know this, one to know that. Phil was trying to get order, okay? And Phil told the officer there, one of the West Philly officers, he says, when Simpson comes up, secure him. Now, secure somebody means different things to different people.
Yeah.
To a cop, under these circumstances, secure, turn around, please, sir, cuff your hands behind your back. For our safety, for your safety, whatever. It was what was in the mind of the officer. Secure to him meant cuff him. Didn't mean he's a suspect or anything else. We didn't want him cuffed. That officer doesn't know what we want. And he's there to try to do his job. And he did what he thought was right. And he did the right thing at the time. Mm-hmm. He didn't know if this was a suspect or not. Simpson was not a suspect at that time. This is before the interview, before any of this stuff.
And this is before you knew that was his blood. Let's make that clear, too. You saw the blood, so it wasn't like you knew that was his blood when he got back from Chicago. That had not yet been determined.
Of course not. And later on, we find out his blood and both victims' blood is all through the Bronco. His blood, the 2 victims' blood, is on that right-hand blood of the Rockingham, too, later on, of course. This all stuff comes out later on. So first thing Phil does is have the officer take the handcuffs off of Simpson, because we just want to talk this out. We're not going to interrogate you. We're going to interview you and just find out what's going on. So one thing leads to another. If we go back to the interview, it's another story. That's another chapter itself. But we got all these inconsistencies. But we got something more. In the end, I said, listen, we got a search warrant for you all at Rockingham. And O.J., would you do me a favor? Going through his mind, he says, yeah, well, probably, I don't know what's going through his mind, but I'm thinking, I might have this guy. Yeah, well, would you give me a hand when we go through the house? I just want to look, we have a search, want to look through the house. Would you like to go with me? Maybe you could help me out. He says, yeah, sure, I'll help you out. We'd love to do that. So if we'd have yelled at him, if this was an interrogation, he would say, no, I'm not going to talk to you. He would invoke and walk out the door. He could have done that. He wouldn't have arrested. But now I've got his confidence, and he's going to be one of us. Can I call you Juice? Or, yeah, you can call me Tom. Just want to get through this. I said, something to the effect is, these warrants can be a pain in the ass. And I understand that. And Arnell had to leave. AC had come over. They went to AC's. I almost want to apologize to you, but we'll get through this. So you just give me a hand. Yeah, we'll get through it. I'll help you out. So I said, well, could you meet us back there? He's thinking, right, well, boy, I don't have to go with him. He's not covering me that. Yeah. I will see you back at your house. The warrant service. We end up going back there. Now, a lot of little things happen in between. But the crux of the matter is we get back there and we're together. And we're walking around. And we go into his bedroom. It's immaculate. There were a pair of socks that came in question that had already been removed. So they weren't an issue when Simpson and I went into his bedroom. We get into the closet. It's a huge walk-in closet. I said, Jess, can you show me what you were wearing last night? And he says, yeah. And he points to a pile of clothes. Obviously, he's not going to point to a pile of bloody clothes.
Right.
Did this side and that. He says, okay, and what kind of shoes were you wearing? You know, you get your shoes? He says, yeah, I was wearing those. He points to a pair of Reeboks. So I pick up the Reeboks. They turn them over. Clearly, they're not the footwear impression that we had at the scene. Mm-hmm. I made sure I got a good look at it. Nothing like them. Says, so you had these? I said, yeah. And I said, would you mind if I kept these shoes? He said, all right. He says, take anything you want. Again, if he'd have been both yelling at us, you think he'd be doing all of this? No. Now, why did they take your shoes? They're clearly not the shoes from the crime scene.
Right.
What I knew, though, is at the crime scene, we had footwear impressions that we could measure the size of the shoe at the person who wore it.
Yeah.
Later, we find out it's size 12 at the scene. So I wonder if these are size 12. This is circumstantial evidence, but damn good if he's got size 12.
Right.
I said, what size shoes you got? He's a size 12. But I didn't tell him that. The only reason I took those shoes was to show there's evidence now that if through his own admission it's size 12 at the scene.
Right.
If they're size 10, then we got a problem.
Right.
That's exculpatory evidence. And while I'm on exculpatory evidence, let me say that it's very, very rare in any murder investigation to not have exculpatory evidence. Something is always something that doesn't fit. This case had nothing exculpatory of a substantive nature. Zero. Nothing.
Yeah.
Which is very unusual. Everything went in the same direction.
So it did. So let's talk. If you haven't seen the documentary, those of us who read Evidence Dismissed, and I got to tell you, if you haven't read the book, I encourage you to buy the book. It's a fascinating read. It's very detailed for those, and I like turning pages. I don't have one on a Kindle. I like turning the pages, and I've been through it a couple times. It's fascinating. So let's tell you about some of the stuff that jumped out in the book. Let's go back to, Tom mentioned earlier this bag that O.J. had, the same bag that Cato and the limousine driver said he didn't want them to go anywhere near. So O.J. goes to LAX. And this gentleman is sitting in his car. I believe he was waiting on his wife, talking about Skip Junis, Tom,
Right.
waiting on his wife. And he sees a limousine pull up, which is, if you've ever flown out of LAX, that's not an uncommon sight to see limousines coming up, either from celebrities being in them or some wealthy member of the Los Angeles community. He notices O.J. Simpson getting out of the limousine. He notices O.J. Simpson sauntering over to a garbage can that's outside of the airport. He notices O.J. Simpson going into a black bag. He notices O.J. Simpson pulling something out of the black bag and then putting it into the garbage can up to his elbow. So he sees him do that, doesn't think a whole lot about it, but he has recall. Now, Tom, you correct me if I'm wrong. This guy calls at first when it becomes clear that O.J. Simpson is a suspect. He initially called the defense, correct?
Right.
And he called the defense to say, this guy couldn't have killed these people. I saw him at the airport. Now, what he saw didn't register to him until certain things became clear that, okay, maybe he did this. Then he calls the prosecution to say, hey, I saw this guy take something out of a bag that was kind of long, wrapped in something, and put in the garbage can. And then how did the prosecution respond, Tom?
Well, actually, it's a little different than that.
Okay.
Judas thought that he might be a defense witness, not because he wanted to be, but because he wanted to do the right thing.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
This is a very credible individual.
Yeah.
Okay? His wife happened to work for American Airlines. She was there in a small, I think, an MG, low-profile car waiting for her, and she was running late. That's when he saw Simpson get... After the red cap and the driver took Simpson's stuff in there, Simpson remains outside to the left of the door.
Okay.
He sees what you already described happen.
Yeah.
When Judas is watching the trial on TV, he says, he's coming together in his mind. He says, well, I call the defense, thinking I'll defense. But no, I think maybe there's more to it. He
Right.
calls me.
Right.
He calls me.
Okay.
So I said, Mr. Jewis, where are you right now? He says, well, I'm at work. He worked, I think he was an architect, worked maybe 2 miles from the airport.
Okay.
I said, can you right now leave where you are? And can you go to American Airlines and can you meet us there? I said, I will be there immediately. He said, okay, I'll do that. So I grab up Phil, I get a photographer, and we shoot down to LAX and we meet him there and we do a walkthrough. We take photographs, we look around, back then, there's 94, they didn't have these security cameras like they do today.
Right.
You see the trash can that he's describing. It said it was 44 inches high, four-sided open, it's a flat top. And he says, yeah, the bag was right on top of this can, and he was taking things out and putting them in here.
Wow.
Years later, I find out that the limo driver saw the same thing.
Oh.
In fact, the special I did a couple of years ago, he was describing it. I said, wait a minute. You saw what? He says, yeah, well, he had the bag up there. And I said, why didn't you tell me that? He says, well, I told the DA that. I told Marcia that. Anyway, we go through all of this. I'm excited. We get a statement from him. We take all these photographs. We do the whole 9 yards. I put it all together, and I go to Marcia. I say, Marcia, you won't believe what I got. We got a witness at the airport that's saying I described it. She says, well, it's one-on-one. I said, what do you mean it's one-on-one? This is a thing that you look at, and I understand you look at it, but who cares if it's one-on-one? If it's a serial killer one-on-one as a witness, okay. This is a very substantial individual out of the community who just happened to be in the right place at the right time and saw this. I want him as a witness. She said, well, we just can't go the one-on-one thing because no one else saw it and they can't back it up. It's already been backed up beyond me, beyond my knowledge, because the limo driver
saw it too.
And she knew that.
Oh.
We never saw it. Now, why would she do that? Not only why would she do that, right here, I have 3 typewritten pages.
Oh, wow.
Of things that they should have put evidence in any murder case. These are all in the book. It would be very probative in any murder case. Put on it and convict you or convict me just in the stuff they didn't use. Okay? He was upset that he couldn't be used. Well, I don't blame him. Why would you not put somebody like this on? And this is only with the beginning. Now, why would she do that? Because she knows, if anything, she's a very smart woman. She knew damn well this would be the LAPD on trial. This is right after Rodney King, one of the worst riots in LA history and the American history.
It happened anyway. It happened anyway.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
So look, let's go back to something.
She knew the cops were on trial, and she wasn't going to be in bed with the cops.
Yeah.
In fact, when I was on the stand for 8 days, I had a harder time with her on direct than I had with Johnny Cross when he was crossing me.
Wow.
With Johnny crossing me, I had a tougher time with her.
It's fascinating. So let's talk about another witness in the case. So Jill Shively is her name, and she was traveling in an area near Bundy and encounters a white SUV, turns out to be the Bronco, coming in her direction with the headlights off. He ends up on the curb, I believe, had encountered someone else that he's screaming at to get out of the way. She sees this, recognizes, that sounds like that O.J. Simpson guy. Now get this, and correct me if I'm wrong. Did she not call the police to report this and give them his license plate number?
She gave a partial, and she was northbound on Bundy at San Vicente where this happened.
She gave a partial of the plate?
Oh, sorry?
She gave a partial of the plate?
I think it might have been a partial. I don't know. But she did say it was identify him as Simpson. It doesn't matter. That's a pretty damn good witness. Yeah, you want.
So here's the thing.
I want to talk to her, right?
Yeah. So here's the thing. So days go by. They know they have her. They know she saw this. She puts him there with what would be an inside of the timeline of the murder eyewitness testimony, but she talks to hard copy. They interview her about it as a witness, and they paid her to be a witness. Because of that, Marcia Clark decided not to use her because she had been paid for her story. Now, nowadays, No one would do that because people are all over Facebook with whatever they see. I was blown away when I read that. So here's someone who saw him leaving the area. She told the story. What was her rationale? Did you get a better explained version as to why she wouldn't talk to this woman?
No, I was the only explanation because she sold her story. That's not only true with her. There's another group of two other people that, under the same circumstances, where Simpson bought a knife from a cutlery shop downtown LA 3 weeks before the murder. He bought a knife. I got a replica of that knife at this store when they gave me their statement, and he wanted it sharpened. And this particular knife was dimensionally consistent with the knife wounds in both of the victims, okay? They sold their story, so she didn't want to use them.
But there's no prohibition in the law that says if someone sells their story, you can't interview them in a murder trial, correct?
No. The same thing happened in back in Connecticut. There's a group that Simpson was an honorary chairman called the Forrester Group. They manufacture knives and wristwatches and things like that. 3 days before the murder, he went back there for a meeting. He's picked up by a limo driver. And on leaving the meeting, all of the people at the meeting got gift bags. Well, guess what the gifts were? All these variety of knives and wristwatches. So Simpson is in the back of the limo going through the bags as the limo driver is driving him to the airport. He takes out a knife, and the limo driver looks in the mirror. He sees Simpson with the knife. He says, "Boy, that's really sharp. This could really kill somebody good." And he kind of laughs to himself. "Yeah, this is what they gave me, and I gave it it." He showed him, he said, "It's sharper." And he said, "Would you like one of these?" And Shover said, "No, thanks for the knife, but I'll take a wristwatch." Said, "Okay." So Simpson gives one of the wristwatches. When the trial starts, this guy calls us. I send one of our investigators back to interview him. He gets a full interview and gives him a polygraph. He passes the polygraph. He never gets a call.
Wow.
That's in my little list here.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And again, documentaries are great. I just encourage the book because it's a lot more thorough than, because they've got limited time with the documentary, kind of like us here. So we go through the process. Let's talk about Mark Fuhrman, right? Johnny Cochran and Carl Douglas and Barry Scheck and that whole team, they're getting paid to make certain that Simpson walks out of there. And a lot of what they did is a function of what defense attorneys do. They throw stuff against the wall to see what sticks. And as Tom said earlier, the LAPD was on trial because these murders happened not very long after the Rodney King beating, and these officers were all acquitted in this act that was completely disgusting. And then you get Fuhrman, who ends up, it's clear there's rumors, and then there's audio of him saying these things. You had said before you knew this, when they were attacking him, that you went to court to stand in solidarity because you had said, look, there's no way he could have done what they're accusing him of because of the circumstances that we've already articulated. And you didn't know these things about him. As they're playing these tapes and learning these things, because you're learning them as the rest of everyone else is learning them, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking that's it. And it's only going to get worse. Because they're going to use this.
Yeah.
That's one thing that this Netflix thing brought out very clear.
Yeah.
And they got him. The last thing that he did, you see Fuhrman doing, is pleading the fifth.
Yeah.
He's going to plead the fifth when he's asked if he plants evidence. He's not going to answer that. As soon as that happened, this is over.
Yeah.
You want to get the jury way out the back door, you just did it.
Yep.
This is easy. No wonder it only took 3-4 hours. This is an easy call.
It was just, you've learned here about the evidence, but that thing, and look, America was in such a different place. When I first heard about this, Tom, having watched O.J. Simpson play football, having watched him on television all those years, and knowing him from a distance, not even knowing about the domestic violence situation because there was no internet back then like that. Cable news didn't share information, so I had no idea. And so I was thinking, well, he couldn't have done that. That doesn't seem like something O.J. Simpson would do. And like most people, you thought, oh, he's got to be innocent. There's got to be another answer. And then you start to learn about the evidence. It's like, that sounds a little bit too spot on for it not to be him. And in the aftermath, there are all these polls that show it's a complete juxtaposition that most Americans now believe he committed these crimes. Is there anything from this trial and the way that it was portrayed and the way it has been portrayed ever since that you look at and either see as legacy or curse?
Simple. When all else fails, you go with the evidence. It can be a curse in someone's mind. It can be an education in someone else's mind. The old expression, the old worn-out expression, it is what it is. This isn't the first time this has happened to me. We had 11 with high-profile cases in my unit.
Mm-hmm.
I had one case, one of the murders that I wrote the book on. It went on for 20 years. 20 years.
Yeah.
We were accused of not just planting evidence, being in bed with organized crime. We were setting up all of these things for organized crime people, and then by a crooked federal agent.
Yeah.
So we're used to being on trial. This was in 1981, for crying out loud. So this is nothing unusual. If you have a thin skin, you don't want to be a homicide cop. You're going to get that 1 or 2 or 3 cases, and we've had many of these cases, serial killers included. Well, we were the ones on trial. All you can do is put the evidence out there and say, this is what it is. And if you don't like it, well, I'm sorry, you don't like cops. Maybe the cop was wrong. Maybe he had a bad problem with the cop. Maybe you got a racist cop, like is obvious here.
Yeah.
That mean that he's lying? Well, he's probably lying about his racism, but he's probably not lying a piece of evidence. But if that's enough in your mind, and that's the system, you go with it. I'd like to get that same jury together today and say, what do you think today?
Oh, I think it would go completely opposite, and some of them have already have been on in documentaries that have stated as much, that in hindsight. So I want to spend the next few minutes talking about The Dirty Business of Murder, the brand new book. I have not yet read it. I'm getting my copy. Let's talk about what that book is about.
Okay, Dirty Business of Murder is an anthology. Bob, Susan, and I put this together over about a 2 or 3 year period. It's about a variety of cases that we've handled through the years. There's 2 or 3 that we were just acquainted with that are very interesting enough, cold cases to put in a book that we added with a few little side features about the psychology of investigative work. They call it Psychology 101 for the murder cop or something like that. It's about 30 or 32 of these cases. Again, they're interesting. I got 2 or 3 serial killing cases in there. They all have a little twist, and they're all just a little bit different. You got some, 3 of them where cops were murdered who we knew very well. They were all killed in shootouts with stories behind them. We've got a cop, a bad cop who was a murderer, who got her story in there, a woman. And just a variety of robberies, organized crime, prostitute murders, serial killers, Skid Row stabbers in there, the freeway killer, the Southside Slayers, of which there were 6 suspects killing prostitutes in South LA over a period of several years. And probably there were 6 killers indicted. We got 2 of them initially. 4 were later made years later on DNA. Good for about 200 or so murders in South LA. One of these suspects, you got to name a little, you may have heard of them, is good for probably 100 murders across this country. Most of them are gone now, like 1 or 2 of them are still alive. But these 6 suspects were good for probably several hundred murders. And they all one time or other, they were all in South LA. And then they went across the country just killing. There's a lot of serial killers out there at that time. People don't realize how many.
It's fascinating. I can't wait to get the book and pour through it myself. Before we leave, I want to go back to one thing that I neglected to mention and just spend a couple minutes talking about it. Obviously, hearing Tom, you may recognize his voice because he was the officer on the phone when Simpson was in the slow speed chase on the 5 freeway in AC Callan's Bronco, driving around. You were talking with him, and to cut quickly through the beginning, you talked with someone who had his number. You called him. You talked with him all on the way to his house. I mean, you lost the connection a couple times. Tell me about that experience and what you were thinking as you were talking with him as he was approaching his home.
Okay, well, I was, obviously, he was the morning, that Friday morning, he was to turn himself in, and he never did.
Right.
There's another story there. Phil and I wanted to just go out and make the arrest, bring him in, no problems. The brass wanted a perp walk, as they call it. They had to have the media involved, and this is what they ended up with, a pile of crap. It was terrible. So I walked in, I'm feeling bad. Well, we got to find this guy. He's taking off with AC. And so I'm at my desk, putting stuff around, taking a couple of calls, and we got a TV like I have here up in the corner. And somebody said, hey, Simpson's on the TV. And it's all with a so-called slow-speed pursuit. And I said, oh, shit. Now we're into it. This went on for a few minutes, and then I said, talking to Patty Jo Fairbanks at the DA's office, and she says, he's got that mobile phone. I said, yeah. I said, well, I get his number right here on my desk. I says, what? Give me his number. And so she gives me his number, and I'm thinking, he's not going to pick up anyway, but I got to do something. Now he's got a gun. Somebody says, hey, he's got a gun. So everybody, oh my gosh, what is he going to do with a gun? So I get him, I call in, he picks up the second ring. Juice, yeah, this is Tom Lange. Oh, and the guy, one of our guys runs out, grabs the tape recorder, comes out. So he missed the first few minutes, but he's moaning about this and moaning about that. So we get the tape recorder hooked up, and there were like 3 or 4 calls after that because we kept losing him. And I kept calling back, and he kept answering. Now, once we find out he's got the gun, and he's obviously, he's either very tired, he's under the influence. He doesn't know what he's doing at this point. I don't think a sociopath would kill himself. If you love yourself, you're not going to kill yourself.
Right.
However, he's got a gun. You got to figure the gun is real. You got to assume it's loaded, and you got to assume he will use it. Mm-hmm. Got all these cops at his rear end. He's got AC in the front. He's got himself. I don't want to blow his brains out because that's kind of my job. We want to find out what happened before you do that. There's all these people now, they're running out of the freeway because it's slow speed. They're banging on the car to get closer in. So I keep calling them back. The only thing I want to do is keep his mind off of the gun and in our conversation. I'm not trying to get a confession out of him or anything else. It's all about the gun. Drop the gun, throw the gun out the window. That was the only thing that I had on my mind to do at the time. And this went on for, 20 minutes or something like that till we got him back to his house, and the rest, as they say, is history.
It was, we didn't know it at the time because I was actually watching, it was a Friday evening because I was watching an NBA Finals game between the Houston Rockets and the New York Knicks on NBC, and then Costas breaks in and talks about this incident. Actually, that was when I learned about the Simpson trial, the investigation. I learned then as they were talking through the fact that his ex-wife and someone had been murdered and he was potentially a suspect, and this is all playing out. And then the iconic split screen between, I think, Game 5 of the finals and this chase in Los Angeles is still one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Look, Tom, this is last year was the 30th anniversary of the murders. This year is the 30th anniversary of the verdict. At some time in the near future, I'd love to get you back to talk specifically about the trial and how that went. You were there. I think you might have been, next to Dennis Fung, the person who was on the stand the longest. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to be able to, and then by then I will have had the chance to buy and read The Dirty Business of Murder. So we'll be able to get into that as well.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, my friend. Stay right there. Look, we've enjoyed having you. Take this ride with us on the C-Suite, and we'll catch you next week.